Hello, everyone. This is JPNIC Talk Lounge. Today's guest is Dr. Philip Smith. Thank you very much, Philip, for coming to us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Wow, great. Thank you very much. I remember that when I met you for the first time, that was in 2000. I remember that at the time you were in Cisco, and then you are already doing the capacity building thing in Cisco. Could you tell me around that how you start this kind of business?
I mean, I think it was purely just by accident or by fortune or whatever else.
Yeah.
Because I was working for the UK's first ISP from 1993 to 1997. So that was
Right.
Pipex,
Pipex.
which was bought by UUNet, bought by MFS, bought by WorldCom. And as some people will know, WorldCom all fell to pieces. I think it was 2000, 2001 with the dot-com crash.
Yes.
But I left at end of 97 and joined Cisco. And really the motivating point then was that I had helped build an ISP. Cisco was keen to know how internet operators use their products. And I was joining the corporate consulting group to try and improve, I suppose, the products and how they're used by ISPs and so forth. And so certainly those 98, 99, the first 2 years, quite a lot of that was spent, a little bit involved in the network operator community. So my first APRICOT was in 1998 in Manila.
Okay.
So that was that February 1998 where I did, just a course. What was it called? Promoting Routability. I did that with Anne Lord, who had just joined APNIC in 98. And that was based on our experiences, hers from RIPE NCC and also her UUNet days and my time.
Okay.
Just how internet works. And it's kind of, that was very, very early on, how internet works, what the best practices are or what the good practices are, how to do routing, how to, it was all this kind of very early, which nobody else had really ever done. And so I was doing little bits of pieces like that with Cisco as well, like some of the ISP workshops that I did with a colleague, Barry Green. And that was much more focused at, it was Cisco customers at that point.
Okay.
But again, we started going around the region, Thailand, the Philippines, and so on.
Right.
Doing these training courses. So the dot-com crash in late 2000, early 2001 kind of changed all that. As you probably remember, a lot of tech companies got rid of a lot of staff. And so my role kind of changed a little bit. My role was up to me to define, but that was really, and you can see it in the routing table growth as well. That period, 2001, 2, 3, it kind of really took off in Asia.
Skyrocketing at the time.
Absolutely took off. And so my workshops, I would still do them for Cisco, but they were much more open now. And so a lot of more people would be invited. And it just kind of grew like that out of, I suppose, just chance. So it's starting to get, help. Because I was doing this training, other people were starting to do things. APNIC was just starting to do the membership services type training as well. And it ended up being, well, maybe we should get more people together. And so NOGs so SANOG, we got going. I forget the dates, would have been 2004. So it just started this whole, one or two more NOGs being formed in the region because somebody just turning up, doing a workshop for 30 people, it's a 30 people impact, but you can put in more around it, maybe with some presentations, tutorials, and it just kind of all grew that way. And of course, there was the INET 2000 in Yokohama, and that was another significant one as well. That's when the Internet Society stopped doing these network training workshops.
That's right, yeah.
And so that gave us involved in APRICOT a big incentive, right? ISOC stopped doing this. What now? And so with APRICOT 2001 in Kuala Lumpur, we thought, well, let's try a workshop because ISOC's not coming back. Let's try a workshop and see what happens.
2001 KL was the first time for APRICOT to have the workshop.
That was.
Yes. I didn't notice it. Okay.
Yeah. It was kind of an experiment. I think we just, what was it? We did two. I think NSRC did a Linux sysadmin workshop, and I did a BGP workshop. And I think those were the two. I would have to check back. But I think it was those two, and it kind of, the region became aware that this was happening. So 2002, 3, 4, the apricots, we carried on doing this. And then, the SANOG model and so on after that.
SANOG was launched. And so at the time, the South Asian countries quite the beginning of the commercial ISPs at the time. Is that correct?
Oh, it was very, very early. I mean, you were still looking at satellite, satellite in Bangladesh, Pakistan. I don't remember the capacity in India, but Nepal was still satellite then also. Or it was just, I don't know if they had, I don't remember, but it was, you go to those countries and you're back to kilobits per second for capacity.
Right. So that it sounds like you were the trainer for the first network engineer in every country.
Probably not the first, but I mean, certainly for quite a few. Just doing these workshops. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, even though I was working at Cisco, it wasn't about training how to use Cisco products. Anybody could go and do the the Cisco certified whatever, which was teaching about the product. And what I was doing, I mean, Barry stopped doing it probably about 2002, 2003 because he was moved into the security side of Cisco. But I carried on doing this, with other Cisco colleagues and then industry colleagues as well. And it's really just, I mean, yes. I mean, I wouldn't just turn up in a country uninvited. That doesn't work. It was very much if the local industry, and it was usually the sales team working. Of course, they were trying to make sales, but the important thing for them was if somebody could show them how to build an internet service provider, how to build an internet exchange point, the value of the exchange point, and so on, then it was a win. Sales were happy, marketing was happy, but for me and for building infrastructure, the industry, the local industry was happy as well.
Okay. That's so for the marketing people and the sales people, they must be so happy to have to increase the sales, but for that you needed to work more and more, and then maybe your focus is for more to the capacity building instead of the sales itself.
Yeah, it was definitely capacity building, and the other internal things I did at Cisco on that side, but it was ultimately building capacity because more capacity there meant that more people got to use the internet, and it just it meant a better internet economy for that country. That was an important thing to get a better economy for that country because so many in the early years were dependent on very, very expensive satellite links, or where they didn't have fiber, or if they did have, it was super expensive compared with like going to Southeast Asia, or I mean even Australia was a little bit better at that point. So
do you tell could you tell the changes over the decades from the early to early notice to maybe you observed the lot of changes in terms of the capacity building, and for example the 2000 and the 2005 2010, do you see any big leap or big jump for the such kind of the mood or vibe of the network operators?
It's it's all, again, I think it depends which country you go to.
Of course.
mean, yes, of course, there are huge changes. I mean, you look at like 2000, how many internet exchange points were there in the Asia Pacific region?
Not many.
Exactly. Whereas now, almost every single country has one of some description, a proper community built exchange point. Some are very, very loose interconnects, and others have much more commercial ventures. I mean, that's a huge change over 25 years. Of course.
Sorry, do you have the big impression for the formation of the SANOG? I guess that the SANOG formation has the big impact to the South Asian internet.
I mean, I think it does. I mean, we kind of did it the funny way around. We started SANOG, which was covering the whole South Asia. So that was started in Kathmandu. So the very first one there. And its mission really was to go around all the South Asia countries to really try and hold an operator event. And, it was hard work in the early years to try and persuade why this is needed. You still had the big incumbents who were, well, we don't need this. We run the internet. Everybody connects to us. We don't need any operator. But during the workshops, that was the very, very important part. And also having, some small conference, a day-long conference, and we do it in each country, really made a difference. Pardon me. And of course, going around South Asia, we did SANOG twice a year, but you can't go to every South Asian country every year. And of course, India was by far the biggest country, so we did more SANOGs in India than we did in the other countries. So that was a big incentive to the other countries to go, well, hang about, we're not going to get SANOG for another 3 years. We need to do something. And so that gave rise to, BDNOG, LKNOG, BTNOG, NPNOG. But the Indian NOG never really happened until SANOG stepped back, because we were going to India once a year, and really when SANOG stopped doing that more recently, that India's own NOG then formed. And
India is a little bit different case.
And Pakistan has always struggled with trying to get a NOG to function. There've been I think two false starts at least. Something kind of happened, and it's still struggling to get going.
Yeah, that's quite a long time for you to be involved there. And then now you have been doing that more than 20 years. That means your students in the 20 years are now the leaders in every country. Well, how do you observe it?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. You look back at some of the early workshops. The first workshop I did in Mongolia was 2005. And, I put up the picture, I think it was last year or the year before when I was doing a workshop there. And people were like, oh, that's my manager. Oh, they're a politician. Oh, they're the CEO.
Young them.
And then it's, oh, Philip, you're still teaching workshop. So it's like, okay, what did I do wrong? But it's interesting, it's all the places you go to, and people walk up to you and they say, oh yeah, I last came to a workshop in 2012. I'm like, yeah, well, great. They remember me, but how many people have been through all those workshops? And I've no idea, thousands.
Okay. I'd like to move to the current situation. How do you describe the current situation of the Asia Pacific network community, or do they have their own challenges right now?
I mean, as in the community, as in like the network operator community, I mean, let's say every country has the network operator group. Some are more successful than others. Some are a mix of, they're grassroots, very what I would call traditional. It's always technical operational content. Others have gone for a mix of, vendor talks and maybe some operational things. Much more a social gathering. But again, every country is different. If you compare like the Pacific, all the Pacific Island region, it's a vast region of the world. And so there it's still every island is still very much its own internet community, and the small communities, it's one or two people, maybe three people who are running infrastructure. It's very, very small compared with other countries which have a super high density. And it's, you look at the community and there's so many different, okay, I'll go back to Mongolia. APNOG is only we're looking at the 8th one this year. That's only 8 years. I mean, when I went in 2005, most people were speaking Russian. There was very little English.
Okay.
There wasn't much sense of a community at all. And it was really only 8-9 years ago that, I went along with APNOG. I think it was a V6 workshop or whatever, V6 outreach that we were doing.
Yeah.
It's a new generation. It's a much younger generation. And so they're not, well, I'm probably wrong in saying this, but they're not thinking the old Soviet, old Russian influence era, where it was very hierarchical, very traditional. This is a young generation, international outlook. And so it's become a very vibrant internet community there. So, that's one example on that side.
Right.
And I can look at, some others that are also similarly vibrant. But then again, the big challenge is that because internet is so international, a lot of people are starting to look to other countries. They're emigrating. Maybe they're going for, education overseas, but a lot of them are then not going back. And so, I'm the worst one to complain. I'm sitting right here as you talk to me, sitting in Scotland where I was born, but I live in Australia and I work across the Asia Pacific region. And so, it's almost like a thing in their community that the internet people are not working in the countries they were born in. But this is a big challenge because, you look at the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islanders will head to New Zealand for, they get better career, better opportunity, more money for families and so on. And, then they come to Australia, you get, South Asia, folks there will go to the Middle East, they'll go to North America, they'll come to Australia as well, because again, it's better opportunities, better salaries, better for the family. So this is a big challenge because we're starving a lot of the countries, which are still, they're not as far advanced as some of the countries are. So they're starving them of talent that they really need to, modernize their internet infrastructure, or at least have it fully operational to the standards that we expect.
Actually, the internet was pretty much modernized and really different from the primitive internet 20 years ago. That's maybe the quite that bring the big problem to the current engineers.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just get this feeling that people think there's much more reward for designing apps, building websites, doing, coding, playing with AI tools and so forth, rather than building the network. And, it's a frequent topic, certainly in the last 3-4 years, at many events I've been to, and we did that at APRICOT as well. We had that discussion in, was it the Philippines, APRICOT, 2023, was, what do we do about the brain drain? Somebody still needs to build equipment racks. Somebody still needs to design the BGP and how all the interconnections, the peering relationships that are going to be, your transit, that all still needs to be done by somebody. Computers can't do that. There's a lot of intuition still needed to make a lot of that work.
For me, when I'm observing the JANOG, the topic is just really, really high level, the front edge AI plus, quite a virtualization of the network, and then fiber optic is much, much faster than that's quite something I can follow, but that's really hard. I cannot do that.
And it's and this is part of the challenge, and and the thing is, I look at it now, I shouldn't have to do BGP workshops anymore. I mean, that was always my view starting out. Oh, maybe there should be 10 years of this, but by mid 2000s, 2005, 6, it should all be done. Everybody knows how BGP works, and there's every country has its own internal. The current BGP network engineers are teaching the next generation. But it seems like the current BGP engineers back then became managers and turned off their BGP, and then the new people coming in have got to start all over again. And it's and it's kind of interesting that there's still this huge demand for what I would consider now basic training on how the infrastructure works. And
actually, BGP is still current and evolving itself.
Yeah.
So it's a quite basic. These days, JPNIC doing the technical seminar, and then that involved a lot of such fundamental things like BGP, DNS, and it is still valid and viable there. So
yeah, I mean that's one thing I did around about the pandemic time.
Sure.
And NSRC recorded most of the BGP content and some others as well. And we just did these short clips, maybe 2 to 5 minute video clips, and they're all on the NSRC website. But that is a hugely popular. There's so many people go and just watch all these short clips. And, that's been a very, very useful service.
Indeed.
But if the subject wasn't needed anymore, nobody would be looking at it. But the fact that they're so popular and people always jumping in just for these short clips, so it's definitely still needed. And this is the challenge we have in the region. I mean, it's not just this, but it's basic infrastructure. I think a systems person will say the same thing. Where's the talent that's building the next generation clusters and so forth? It's no longer it's not a point and click that you get so often.
All right. Do you have any idea for the future in terms of what would be the important for the engineers, or what would be important for the capacity building itself?
Well, I mean, the bandwidth increase is never going to go away. Everything, well, at least people who run their own optical infrastructure are all looking at coherent optics. So what that's going to do for capacity. And so the network equipment is you're still going to be able to need to understand how to build a lot of this stuff. The peering dynamics are all changing. The hyperscalers have an impact.
That's right.
The model they have, whether they direct peer or whether they now have preferred partners and so on. But I think the industry needs to have an agility to understand that. Like the people who are like the network engineers need to have an agility to understand that, rather than just seeing them as particular blocks of like, oh, such and such hyperscaler is not doing this anymore. It's terrible. What do I do? They need to have that knowledge and agility to be able to work around whatever is given. The current fashion is for these AI data centers, and so they look for places with plenty of power. They look for places with plenty of cooling. But then is there bandwidth into those places? So how are we going to even try and think of do that? They could end up in parts of the world, for example, in the Himalayas, where there's not enough fiber. So how are you going to build? So I don't know. It's just these are some of the at least the one that I'm sort of very, very aware of. I mean, okay, RAM prices go up and up and so on, but it's infrastructure demands. They're always going to be there, and they're always a major challenge.
Yeah. I interviewed Jeff Houston, and he said internet was developed and evolved between the abundance and the scarcity of for example, semiconductor and the capacity kind of thing. So my point is that such a component of the internet are individually evolve in its way, then that changes the balance of it, and then every time engineer need to be adapting it to do the different thing. That would be the one with the difficulty for.
Yeah, and it's not a knowledge set that you can just put somebody through in a 5-day training course. I'm often asked about that. Oh, can you teach the next generation of internet expert? It's like, I've been doing this since 1990. Well, the current university probably since 1987. You can't just train that to somebody else who could, just sort of jump in and do that work and have think about how all the interrelationships and so on.
Thank you very much. It's Every time is not infinite, then it's a shame. Then the second last question is that what do you see the Japan and the Japanese community in the short words?
What do I see? Well, it's I've only ever been to one JANOG, but I always hear the stories coming back from JANOG. I mean, it sounds like an absolutely incredible event. And what I think is most amazing, it's done in your own language. I admire that. I mean, that's how all NOG should be, quite honestly. It's done in your own language. The model is very different from what we do at other NOGs or even at APRICOT. You found something that works for you, and people are excited to take part in it all. So from that side, from a community side, it's a very, very active, probably one of the most active communities compared with the size of population. I mean, it's always one thing I look at, how many people live in the country versus how many people come to the NOG. And, so JANOG is always a very impressive indication of that for me. So, I mean, it shows to me that it must be a very vibrant community, because if it wasn't, the industry wouldn't be working very well. The internet exchange points are working, at least from an outsider's perspective. It's just, it's a nice example, again, from an outsider's perspective of a well-working internet infrastructure and community supporting it.
Right. So JANOG is long-standing. JANOG established in 1997. So they are celebrating the 30th anniversary in the next year. Then we have a lot of country level NOGs right now, and it is really great evolution of the network operating community. So it's one of the impressive point of me for these 20 years.
Yeah.
Maybe you share this sense, right?
Yeah, it totally is. And it's, I was invited by APNOG AIS to go do a talk about that at the last year African Internet Summit, because we look at the continent, we all look at the continent of Africa and go, well, APNOG has been doing the same type of video as SANOG, going around the countries, but they've never succeeded really leaving a NOG behind. And then what's the magic in Asia Pacific region? And it's like it's hard to say. I don't know if there is any magic. It's just there's a local community that's been inspired by APRICOT as the event. They see another country doing a NOG. We need to do something as well. Or there's an exchange point. So the exchange point member meeting has become bigger, so it becomes a network operator. It could be the local top-level domain registry has helped influence it as well. There's all these kind of, it's not just, a group of friends get together. There's, industry bodies as well will help do that influence. And it's just been such an incredible story for the Asia Pacific region. I think anyway.
Yeah, that's actually thanks to you who developed a lot of human resource who now leading the industry and the community of each country or Asia Pacific region. So I'm actually older than I was in 20 years ago then. So the younger generation doing the very full swing in our community is a really delight thing for me. So
I don't think any of us set out to do this. It was just all we're setting out to do was make the internet work for some organizations in a country, and it's just the whole thing just gets momentum and fans out. So it's been really good to see.
That's So it's actually the wonderful thing we share with the younger generation is that we want to operate and run the internet. That's actually the same. A lot of things which consist which makes the internet is different. But one shared thing is that we need to run the internet we need to do the right things for the internet. That kind of thing is shared, and then I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Philip, for your fascinating talk.
Thank you.
What I think you are so busy, but what do you have? What do you do in your free time? Other than the business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's quite a few things. I'm keen cyclist, walking, going, looking interesting places, reading, whatever, it's just all relaxing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do less now, so it's not super hectic living all the time, but I'm spending quite a bit of time visiting my mother at the moment. So as you say, we're all getting older, she's getting older, so so I just cherish the time that I can spend with her. I mean, I'm far away, but I can try and visit her 2-3 times a year. So just generally relaxing in between trips, and
all right.
Otherwise, that's about it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and please do take care of your health. You need to.
Well, thank you.
You have a lot of things to do onward.
I'm trying to step back more and more. So every year goes on. Time to step back a little bit.
Good luck.
Because otherwise it just ends up Philip is doing everything, and it's like, no.
All right.
The message is the younger generation need to step up and start
That's correct.
Doing some of this.
We expect that very, very much. Then thank you very much, Philip, for to joining the Internet JPNIC Talk Launch. So see you next time.
Will do. Thanks for the invitation.
Somewhere on the globe. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thanks, Sakudari. Okay.
Bye now.
Bye.